All right, well, let's begin. I see people joining us, coming on. Welcome, everyone, this morning to our Democratizing SaaS session. I see people coming in via our Zoom link, and I see people coming in from Europe and other locations via our other registration vehicles. Thank you and welcome. We'll give you a couple of minutes to get settled in here, and I've got some introductory business to do, so let's get started. First of all, again, welcome. My name is Scott Hamilton. I'm CEO of the Executive Next Practice Institute. We're based at the University of California, Irvine, Beal Applied Innovation. This is one of our leadership virtual experiences. This is number 411 over the past 11 years. If you look at the screen there, that's what we looked like in March with lots of non-social distancing. Of course, now all this is done virtual, and we're glad you're able to join us this morning. We've got a stellar panel for you this morning. I'll introduce these folks in just a moment, but this has been a long time coming, and we've been delighted to work with Faizi Futehi, one of our members, for well over a decade, and really looking forward to this overview of the SaaS platform and entire story. Just a little bit of background about who Executive Next Practice Institute is. It's a very unique organization that's worldwide. It is both membership, and it's also about deal connection, deal formation, and connecting companies with capital, as well as established companies looking at how they can better transform their strategy, particularly in the times of crisis. So what we tend to do in these sessions is look at first look ideas. That is, what's emerging? What is really taking hold? What will take us forward and propel us forward in these times of crisis? And we also, by the end of this session, like all the others, will look to create what we call next practices for you, the viewer. That is, next practices, what will take you beyond the status quo? How can you leverage SaaS, or how can you leverage this kind of platform approach and these kind of strategies for your organization? This one is particularly appropriate. I think you'll see why by the close of this session. So again, join us on a regular basis. I will do a quick commercial for our upcoming event, which is 2 weeks from today on Thursday, August 27th. That's our Innovation Summit that features virtually everyone in the innovation ecosystem to look at how you can leverage both entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship to drive your organization forward. So we've got a stellar panel for that coming up. Again, August 27th. If you see the picture there, these are names from across the enterprise and startup spectrum that will be guiding us on August 27th. Be sure to join that session. Very fast-paced, but deep dive on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship and the channels that will help you propel you forward. All right. Finally, we want to thank also our internal team, Nextwork Strategy, who does exactly what we're doing in these events, but do it for companies. That is virtual retreats, virtual strategy sessions, and they're quite busy right now, as you can imagine, helping companies get on track for 2021. Again, congratulations to our Nextworks team who won, or was nominated rather, for Innovators of the Year 2020 by Orange County Business Journal. I also want to thank our sponsors. These are terrific folks who came in stepped up to the plate for this session. Microsoft Allure. Their mission with Microsoft is to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. With Microsoft's commitment to open source and support for all languages and frameworks, you're empowered to build how you want and deploy where you want and invent with purpose. Following this session, you're going to be given a link to a free account with Microsoft. And I know you'll want to take advantage of these services. Again, thank you, Microsoft. Also, terrific sponsor for us, Fish IP. Robert, I know you're here. We'd love to hear from you about Fish.
Okay, just for a couple minutes. Hi, everyone. This is Bob Fish, Patent Counsel for Corent. We've been very happy to have played our part in making Corent successful over the years. In a relatively short time frame and against a virtual wall of complexities, we've managed to obtain 7 patents and an 8th patent about to be issued, containing a combined total of over 100 IP claims. Our claim to fame is drafting patents from a business perspective. Rather than just drafting claims to the technology, our focus is on putting speed bumps and roadblocks in the way of competitors. So really a business perspective. And that's how we approached Corinth's inventions from start to finish. I have to say that the process has been very successful. And working with Fezi, co-founder, CTO Shafi Syed, and VP Scott Chait, working with all those guys has been an absolute delight. You can see some of our creativity on display at our website, fish-ip.com. There's my commercial.
That's a great one, Robert. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate that. And again, following this session, you're going to get detailed information on all these sponsors. They are just terrific people, again, who stepped up today and supporting this event and are tremendous partners with Corinth and with E&P. Thank you again. Our long-term partner, Insperity. Monica, are you there? Let's and share a couple of things about Insperity with us.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Monica Alfisi, and I'm a business performance advisor with Insperity. I've been with Insperity for over 4 years now, and we focus on helping small to mid-sized level businesses really create a strong HR infrastructure. We use a lot of technology through SaaS. We have automation through an HRIS platform and a high-touch service model that allows our companies to grow and leverage all of our resources to be able to just excel and take that business to the next level. A couple of things that we offer that's very proprietary or a key factor in helping your business grow is Insperity does offer large group benefits at a fraction of the price to our smaller businesses. It allows you to compete with top talent and compete with companies like Google to find the right engineers, the right people to fill the seats in your organization. We also work with international companies who want to set a footprint here in the States and open up a shop here in the States. So we manage your employees through our HR team and our HR practices, so it allows you to manage and see people remotely. So we'd love to have a conversation with you if and when you're ready. And I'm Monica Alfisi with Insperity.
Monica, thank you so much, and thanks for supporting this event. You've been a terrific partner here as well as in the past for E&P, and of course, long-term partner with Fezi and Corinth. Thank you so much for what you do. Again, for the audience, you're going to be getting a resource kit after this event, which will give you the links to Insperity and these other great sponsors and to the content we're displaying today. So also, there'll be a video. This session will be on video and distributed to you following the session, about 2 days after. All right. Last but certainly not least, thank you, our developer and co-host, Fezi and Corinth. You'll hear from Fezi here in just a moment, but thanks for being just such a terrific partner over the past decade. Use your Q&A function today. I see some of you are starting to look at that. As you have questions, don't hesitate. Go ahead and throw the questions at us. We will be dealing and answering all of your questions. All the panels will be talking with you before the close of this session. So use the Q&A. If you need to do private chat, let us know something, feel free to do so, but leverage that. You should see it on your screen. You'll see a Q&A feature there on your Zoom screen. All right, so let's get to this. I mentioned we've had an absolute stellar panel today to talk about democratizing SaaS. We'll talk about Carlos first. Carlos is from a division of Accenture that provides commercial software applications to its customers. Carlos will be talking about the benefits of SaaS to an ISV. Jim was the CIO of Microsoft from the beginning of their international journey to Azure. He will be talking about the benefits of SaaS and private SaaS from an internal consumption point of view. Walid was senior executive with two of the largest software and cloud providers on the planet, Microsoft and Oracle. He will present his views on the benefits of SaaS from a software and cloud provider perspective. And finally, our long-term friend, Fezi Fatehi with Corinth, the company behind the Software Defined SaaS Platform for rapid and automated SaaS enablement of software applications with a no-code development approach for ISVs, CIOs, and even open source companies. And I'll also tell you, of course, you saw his bio, you saw his the complete bios of all these gentlemen earlier. We sent you. Fezi is well-known, recipient of the Cody of the Year Awards, well-known throughout the software industry. This is really going to be a story about SaaS and how you develop and launch and create platforms. And it's extremely timely in this time of crisis. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to bring Faisy on. Faisy, I know you've got a few slides that you're going to go through fairly quickly here so we can get to the panel. So I'm going to stop share, and Faisy, I'm going to turn the driver over to you. Here we go.
Okay, let's see if I can share my slides. Okay, outstanding.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so you see my screen.
We got you, and if you'll go to your slideshow there.
Okay, let's see. I'll share, okay.
Yeah, you got, we see your slides, just go to, if you'll go to slideshow.
Okay, slideshow, okay. Resume slideshow. Okay, are we good?
We're looking. So again, I know you've got quite a few slides. You're just going to top line for us and go through fairly quickly, but looks good. Thank you.
So you see our slide. Okay, super. So let's see if we, okay. All right. So let's just start with a few rapid questions. And once again, it's such a pleasure to be part of this stellar panel with such wonderful sponsors. Want to start with a few rapid questions and dive into some fresh information, hopefully for all of you or most of you. First of all, what is software defined SaaS? Why is it disrupting the software and SaaS industry? And how is it posed to spare thousands of new high-tech, high-paying jobs and entrepreneurial jobs? The short answer to the question of what is software-defined SaaS, it's a platform that automates SaaS enablement. A platform that automates SaaS enablement. Instead of doing it by hand and take years, it does it for you very quickly. The longer answer is it's the automation of transforming a non-SaaS application to a fully instrumented SaaS solution, including multi-tenancy, metering, monetizing, management capabilities, and it's done in hours without any programming. And simply defining the capabilities using a wizard-style process. Now, the extra credit answer to the question is for some of the top SaaS offerings, it took years and tens of millions of dollars to do exactly what we are talking about on the top, to SaaS enables their solutions. And many others that we don't hear their names anymore, they could not survive because they couldn't handle the time and the money. As far as the software-defined SaaS, also it's called Surpass as another name for the platform. It's the only platform that in an automated and fully integrated fashion end-to-end can take an application that's sitting on premises, lift and shift it to the cloud, optimize it for the cloud. We call it cloudifying it as if it was designed and developed for the cloud, and then building the PaaS services such as database as a service, application as a service, and all the good stuff that you get value out on the cloud automatically into the application, and finally SaaS enable that application in a way that it can go to market in an automated fashion, doing all the multi-tenancy as well as the monetization and everything else. So as Bob mentioned before, we have 7 patents on this process and over 100 patent claims. And it's just an amazing process of working with Bob to deconstruct complex concepts and then reconstruct them from a business perspective that comes so basically to highlight the uniqueness of this technology and the invention. Microsoft has been a phenomenal partner in terms of understanding, identifying, and capitalizing in partnership with Corent to highlight to the world about this next-gen SaaS technology that ludicrously fast would move application to become SaaS. And in that light, Microsoft created an ebook in combination with Current, and that ebook is available on our website. And it's a book that describes how advanced technology like Current's software-defined SaaS is driving the next generation capabilities for SaaS on Microsoft Azure. So what I want to do is go over some examples of SaaS enablement and SaaS operations to really make this clear to the audience, because generally people are familiar with the concept of SaaS, and they look at it as when somebody subscribes to a software is SaaS, which is basically correct. How about look at it from the provider perspective? Is the provider loses money every time somebody subscribes to the software, as opposed to the cost of the next customer getting on board to be free? And that is what the software-defined SaaS platform brings to the table. So we are going over a few applications and show you what happened to them. I want to address Mifos last, because the implication of Mifos for creating jobs and new entrepreneurial opportunities as an open source is tremendous, but then every other aspect would be a very viable example. MyEKC stands for My Employee Knowledge Center. And this is an application that our customer, Har Adhesive, they're in the glue business, and they decided that they need a software for their internal employees to retain and maintain and improve the internal knowledge of how they do things, the processes. So when an employee leaves, the next one comes in, they just go through what they need to know, something that we predict would be as predictable, as successful as Salesforce.com, because like Salesforce.com, every company needs this, or I should say like a CRM, every company needs this solution. And they designed it for themselves, but then people from outside heard about it. They said, how can we get access to this solution? And the CEO of the company was giving copies to his friends, and all of a sudden said, why aren't we making this a SaaS solution and making it available to the world, taking an internally developed application and make it available for the world? And instead of spending years of developing it, they came to Current, and voila, that solution is available as SaaS. It's also on the Azure Marketplace, so people can go there and subscribe to it and literally transform their business for better. Bluestripe is a company that was used by both, we heard, by AWS and Azure as an internal solution to help manage their cloud. And at some point, they decided it's better for them to be owned by one of these giants. And when they figure out they're not a true SaaS, we heard they just said, no, sorry, not interested. And their investment banker, at the time, Pacific Crest, reached out to Current and asked us to urgently make it SaaS for them to get back to the potential acquirers. And guess what? Microsoft acquired the company after the company was SaaS-enabled in approximately 48 hours, believe it or not. I mean, it took some of these major SaaS companies years in order to deliver their SaaS. And here is the software-defined SaaS in 48 hours, and Bluestripe became part of Microsoft. MAPR, some of you may have heard of those, especially in Silicon Valley, was called one of the major companies that received, I forgot, $280 million or $380 million of venture capital as a unicorn. And they did a lot of good things, except making their solution fully capable SaaS. And I went to the next slide. And fully SaaS-enabled their solution, and then Hewlett-Packard acquired them. Cello, the global logistics solution for Samsung, with over 4,000 internal and external suppliers, dealers, entities that use that solution. Instead of the 4,000 entities downloading that solution and then upgrading it and managing it, they came to us to Saas-enable this solution. We call it a private SaaS. It's not for public to use, but for the 4,000 entities within Samsung and within the extended enterprise. And again, this one took more than a few hours, very sophisticated application that got SaaS-enabled. So it shows the power of the platform, whether you're a small company or whether you are one of the major corporations in the world. The technology doesn't discriminate or favors you in different ways. Now I'm getting to Mifos, but before that, one of the advantages of the software defined SaaS is not only it SaaS enables commercial solutions like ISV solutions or enterprise solutions such as Samsung, but also you can pick any open source solutions out there. And last time we checked, there were over 1,500 open source enterprise solutions used by the CIOs at the Fortune 1000. The number of open source solutions, such as the ones owned by Lawrence Livermore Lab and other national labs, it just in tens of thousands of applications that are taxpayer developed. They're available to anyone using the Freedom of Information Act. So these applications, we believe 99% are not SaaS enabled because it's very difficult to SaaS enable a solution. So these are some applications that are already SaaS enabled by Corent that are available. Mifos came to us as an open source solution, microfinance open source, and we are very pleased to partner with them and SaaS enable their solution. They are the one true open platform for the financial inclusion from around the world. The goal is to include everyone in the world. There are 2 to 3 billion unbanked and underbanked people that they don't have access to banking, therefore they don't have access to credit. Therefore, it's one of the major reasons for their extreme poverty. And it was inspired by the Gramian Foundation and the fact that Dr. Yunus won the first ever economist actually that won the Nobel Peace Prize, not a politician. And his idea was to offer microfinance starting in Bangladesh and go around the world, winning the Nobel Prize. Mifos was created by some Silicon Valley, mostly Silicon Valley or high-tech executives to create a core banking services as an open source and make it available for free to regions of the world that they don't have access to banking. And many known high technology companies were part of contributors, whether financially or technologically. The software was created, except that it wasn't becoming prolific around the world. And they figured out the reason for it is not SaaS. Everybody can download it, then they have to install it, they have to upgrade it, they have to get a database, they have to get an app server, and application being free is not the main factor to make this application usage viral. So they tried to make this SaaS themselves. To some degree, they were successful. Eventually, we are delighted that they came to us, and together we made the application SaaS, and it's really taking off around the world. And we are glad that Microsoft partnered with us through the Azure platform. So right now, Microsoft, Mifos, and Corent, we are adamant to make sure this solution gets as much traction around the world and create or alleviate one of the reasons behind extreme poverty. So the point here is that anyone can pick any of the open source applications out there and use current software-defined SaaS to transform it to SaaS and go to market with it. It doesn't have to have such a dramatic purpose and mission. It doesn't have to be mission-driven like Mifos. It could be any commercial application on the list that I showed you, and you're in business. All of a sudden, within a week or so, you have a SaaS business that you can go to market. You can have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 employees promoting that, knowing that you don't have the burden of R&D. There are some brilliant people in the world, generally the employees of Microsoft, Google, Amazon, IBM, and others, who are, as part of their contribution to the open source community, they're keeping these applications up to date. And there are organizations for each application. You could find 5, 10, 15 organizations that are supporting the applications. So what is missing here is someone to take it to market as SaaS. And you as a person, you as some college friends graduating together, you as a division of a major corporation, you can be those people who take these applications out. Some of my friends call it Operation Liberation. We are liberating great software that is developed and make it accessible to people around the world. And in the meantime, we can make a living by doing that. Very quickly, if you go to Current's website, you will see the open source application section called Open SaaS, and it describes how the products. And again, if you go to Azure Marketplace, you see a page that surpass Marketizer, the product that takes any application and moves it to the cloud marketplace, in this case, the Azure Marketplace, and you don't have to spend weeks and just in a matter of a few hours, mostly in a self-service way, your application could be on Azure Marketplace. And this is one of the ads that Microsoft designed: launch your application into Azure Marketplace ludicrously fast. So maybe it looks like ludicrously showing up on different Current and Microsoft. For those of you who own some special form of electronic car, you know what that ludicrously fast means. Don't want to become as an advertising mechanism here for it. So last couple of slides here. Software-defined SaaS enabled 6 new waves of job creation and job preservation and billions of dollars of entrepreneurial opportunities in 6 different ways. First of all ISVs with legacy software applications that may be going out of business, they can launch their new SaaS offering now, immediately, using Current, like next week. How do we go back? I clicked the wrong, let's see if I can, okay, I'm going the wrong way. I think I know how to do this. Okay, so, so all ISVs can launch their existing solutions which are not SaaS as SaaS. Next, all ISVs currently developing new software applications, they can accelerate their going to market by not spending that probably 80% of the time that goes into developing their SaaS, and just developing their product, plug into the platform, the software defined SaaS platform, and go to market. And then all CIOs to deliver their internal enterprise applications as corporate SaaS, the same way that Samsung did, also Boeing did. So delivering their internal applications to the internal audience as SaaS, and also work with an MSP or themselves if they want to deliver any of their internally developed applications as a new SaaS product, like MyEKC did, as a new stream of revenues. Also, they can polish one or more publish one or more open source applications as fully instrument SaaS. Speaking of polish, they can take the open source and make some special polish to it to make it more focused on a specific niche market, maybe a special geography, language, industry, and that could be one of the reasons to take an open source solution to market with that special purpose idea, and or publish an open source solution on the cloud marketplaces. And right now we have over 10 of them published as an example on Azure Marketplace that anyone can take and go to market with. This is a pictorial way of showing there are so many different ways that this platform can be used in order to generate billions of dollars and generating jobs as this process is taking place. And let me finish this segment before we jump into the conversation with our panel with highlighting a beautiful article that was published just a few days ago, 2 days ago, by our very own Sean Jazairi, who is an iconic figure in the industry, former founding CIO at Avanade and former Microsoft executive and Accenture executive as well. And a lot of people we have heard through the years telling us why we should offer our solution as SaaS, why you should SaaS enable your software. But now this paper shows you how, not only why you should SaaS enable it, but how you can SaaS enable your software. So that's the end of this section, Scott.
Yep, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Faizi, for that very comprehensive overview. And I appreciate you going into the technical detail because, again, part of this is about SaaS, but it's also about platform creation and development. And it's quite an interesting legacy. It looked like there are many stops and starts to SaaS itself. And so it's a great lesson in terms of platform development overall. So let me have you turn the hosting back to me, but also let's have you bring up your panel if the panelists could join us. And I know you have some questions for your panel, Faizi, and we'll get into a conversation here.
Yeah, so let me make you host. And yes, are you back as host?
Let's see, you'll just stop sharing and we're good.
Stop sharing, okay. So let me start by asking a question from Walid. What is the future of developer tools? You were in charge of the Microsoft developer ecosystem and the platforms. And how do you see the future of developer tools and how will this affect the productivity of the engineers moving forward, Walid?
Oh, good morning, Faizi and Scott and the panel and everybody on the call. So it's an honor to be here talking to this distinguished panel here and everybody on the call. So this is actually a very, very deep question. The most important comment, the most important word of your question is productivity. Developers are all about productivity, and the more productivity we could achieve through our tooling chain, the better we will be as a society in terms of developer elements. And I measure developer productivity is a very simple mechanism. From the time you start writing code to the time you deploy that code, what are the tool chains? What are the things that you need to do to compress that cycle in a significant way? So it's really critical. The future are in two dimensions here that I see in developer tools. The advent of no-code, low-code is going to accelerate. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to hear a significant more explosion about low-code, no-code environments where people want to be able to go from idea to some code into a full production app in almost, in few clicks instead of writing a lot of code that exists today. And there will be a combination of that. Second to this is going to be AI and ML. So an AI and ML will actually manage that process going forward too. So back to Cornet and what you guys are doing here, I think you're a very important piece to that productivity achievement for developers going forward. Developers hate rewriting code. They just don't want to do that. They don't want to take their legacy apps, and by the way, I define legacy here, anything I've written in the last 24 hours. So that's what legacy is in a lot of ways. So a legacy application, you take that legacy application, and let's say you want to modernize it, you want to move it to the cloud, or you want to do something with it, or you want to SaaSify it. That's your term, I'm using Faisy here. You want to do these things. They just hate cracking that code and going and doing that. So providing platforms and tools like what you're providing here will help these developers be very, very productive going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Walid. I have more questions for you.
Sure.
Jumping to Jim here. Jim, as a CIO of Microsoft, you were in charge of migrating everything to the cloud, to Azure. What was the biggest learning during that process?
Oh, wow. There were...
I start with easy questions.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a ton of learning. I'll probably simplify it just to two. And one of them was the people transformation, because everybody in the IT organization that's been running everything has to completely transform. And if you don't transform roles and skills as you're doing it, the people are just going to be friction holding back the pace. The other thing is, it's not just about moving everything to the cloud. There's a huge difference in how you move it. If you're just lifting and shifting to IaaS is what people typically know how to do, and it's therefore the easiest, but it's actually the least efficient. If you rewrite some things to PaaS, it's better. If you can actually move what you have to a SaaS application, that's the best. So how you migrate was probably the biggest learning that we had as we went through the process. I wish that we had Current available when we did this several years ago.
Yeah, I've heard that from a few people. I heard it from Zach Nelson, former CEO of NetSuite, who sold the company to Oracle for $9.5 billion, while Salesforce.com, that they always compared themselves to, is market cap is like 150 billion. Zach said, Faisy, where were you 10 years ago? Because they could have acquired any software company and within 48 hours make it SaaS, or few hours, and that would have been a riot. Jim, one more question before I jump to Carlos. What would you do differently, if any?
Well, I would have not tried to plan it all out in the beginning because we learned so much as we started going, and I would have used tools like Corin offers to just migrate things to SaaS as opposed to doing as much lifting and shifting. In particular, the whole development test environments that we did first turned out to be a complete waste because as we got the process going to move to the cloud, we ended up rewriting all of our deployment processes so that we actually had no persistent test environments, where we would just do it as part of a test run where it would spin up the cloud capacity and run the tests and then turn it back off. So we learned a ton as we went. So I wouldn't try to plan it all out in the beginning. I would start and learn and incrementally migrate.
Right, incredible.
Leveraging some of the bottom tools.
Right. You don't, and that's something that Sean Jazari on this beautiful article that he just published a couple of days ago mentioning there are tools available. If you want to gain on your competition, time to market, use it. So Carlos, you are one of the thought leaders and top people at Accenture focused. Please differentiate Accenture and somebody else is building. How do you differentiate it from a SaaS perspective? What are some of those aspects from a product perspective in your mind?
That's a good question, Faisy, and thanks for having me here. It's an honor. Hopefully you can hear me properly. I'm a little bit far away from everyone.
You're in Madrid. Where are you? You're
that's right. That's right.
On a beach somewhere.
Spain, Europe. That's right. That's right. A very hot day here, by the way. So maybe let me start. Let me give you some super quick context on our journey to SaaS, because I think it's interesting. And so we typically do our journeys through disruptions, right? I remember, for example, Accenture created the software division more or less 10, 11 years ago. And that was the time where we were facing what we call the intellectual property disruption. So basically, service companies such as Accenture required to have additional value provided through intellectual property, like creating software or implementing software, right? Then a couple of, 3-4 years ago, what we saw is actually the big disruption of SaaS. And SaaS was basically about the one-to-many model. So it's not enough with having one software that you just, bring to a client and that's it. No, you want to have actually a one-to-many software that you use for all the clients with a single code base and everything. That's a big benefit, right? Then probably 3 or 4 years ago, what we saw was another big disruption. It's what we call the open platform disruption. And that was the time where people started to talk about how we can actually bring value to our software through including other partners, through having more open APIs, collaborate with the clients, deliver SaaS for consortiums and things like that. And then finally, what we are seeing in the past probably 6 months or maybe 12 months is that there are more and more queries from clients that want to take these open platforms and actually make these open platforms more what they call my own enterprise platform. So that's what we call, for us, this is probably going to be another disruption. I think Current may actually play an interesting role there because, again, we see some CIOs that are actually discussing with us, I want to use your insurance platform or something, but I want to be able to deploy it to multiple divisions and I want to be able to manage my internal subscription and everything. So that's probably one interesting scenario for you. Now, in terms of the differentiation, how we differentiate the offering, very quickly, obviously, first is functionality and quality. But the interesting thing is it's not enough with having a good software from the beginning. You need to have a good software, and then you need to continue adding functionality again and again, right? That's the big benefit from SaaS. Then for ISVs, such as big ISVs such as Accenture, we differentiate through stringent service levels and long-term commitments. So we can we face what the challenge of mission-critical applications actually turning into SaaS. This was not the case 7 years ago, but it's the case in the past 3-4 years. So we need to actually show a much better commitment. That's a way to differentiate. And probably the last one is the breadth of the configuration for our SaaS. So SaaS is one-to-many, right? But the big challenge is if it's one-to-many, you need to be able to configure it properly to work. And it's more than branding, right? We need to create software development kits and things. So clients can use our software without modifying the core software. And the breadth of this configuration is probably the main way to differentiate that we have. So hopefully this is answering your question, Faisy.
Yeah, it did. As a matter of fact, when we talk about, very, very helpful, when we talk about software-defined SaaS, you can also say self-configurable SaaS. So the platform allows for that self-configuration because not two customers' needs are the same. And they can configuring it, but we're still using the same software hosted as SaaS. One quick question for you. What are the most, no pressure, what is the most coveted skills for SaaS developers at the moment?
Well, that's a very good question. Actually, we are a big ISV, so we have 2 types of products. What we call the small products, where we actually deploy mostly full stack engineers, right? So they do everything. It's like the traditional 2-pizza team concept. But we also have big products where we have, let's say, 100 to 200 developers, and there we actually separate front-end and back-end development. So these are still very hot skills. But I think one important thing to remember is, in our case, and I think in most ISV cases, the engineering headcount is only probably 35 to 40% of the total headcount. So there are many other roles that are necessary, and that includes product management, that include Scrum Masters, for example, people with a specialization in Agile, architects for software, for infrastructure, DevOps, security specialists. And lately, actually, we face a big challenge because I think Walid was talking about machine learning being one of the big disruptions. And one of the cool skills is that we are actually trying to hire, almost crazy, is data scientists, right? because every product roadmap is adding machine learning and artificial intelligence functionalities, and that's one of the most scarce, skill in the market.
Right. Perfect. One point that I forgot to mention in my talk was that when entrepreneurs can take an open source solution and turn it into SaaS and run with their own company, one of the biggest things that scares them is, how do I run a company? The answer is work with our friends on the call Insperity. They take care of the entire administration work, and then work with people like Bob Fish that takes care of your intellectual property, and work with Microsoft Azure that takes care of all your hosting capabilities, instead of trying to do it yourself, and work with organizations that provide support for the open source organization. They're more than happy to provide support for the SaaS version, and then go to the entire users of that open source solution, sometimes tens of thousands of users, and tell them there is a SaaS version. And look at the exodus from just running it themselves to come to your solution. So the first few thousand customers that usually is the hardest to acquire for any SaaS company is already there. And Mifos is experiencing that, because people who are using Mifos in the most difficult way of downloading it and hosting it and upgrading it, now they're moving to the SaaS version. And the skills that you just mentioned, Carlos, it's important for people to understand and shift themselves and even regard themselves as scientists, as you mentioned. Along those lines, Walid, would you comment on how developers or companies should change their process of software development and the workflow, and the new technologies for SaaS? How would it impact the overall process of work, if any?
I think there is a massive transformation. Writing software for a traditional, on-prem software, and we all know that. I think the transformation already occurred. But there is a comment that Carlos made, and that's very critical, is the DevOps piece of the developer. I think there is a transformation happening right now where DevOps and development is actually merging as disciplines. I don't see separation. Even in my previous roles when I was building products, I actually merged the teams. I don't see separation between developers or testing or DevOps. I actually eliminated a new role called a test engineer. I called it a developer in test or developer in DevOps. So they're all the same thing. And the most valuable developer for me is the developer who can write code, test the code, and deploy the code in DevOps and environment. Those are get paid the highest in any organization. So the transformation already occurred. And from a SaaS point of view, SaaS is a deployment model, the way I look at it. It's not a technology choice. It's really a deployment model. It's a business model and a deployment model. From a developer point of view, I would give one advice to any young developers coming into market or developers who are experienced. Get knowledge in DevOps. A developer who knows how to do DevOps is incredibly more valuable. And they end up making, and we have some statistics showing up that they end up making actually 50% more than a pure developer who's developing code or a pure DevOps person in there. So, and getting new tools. I mean, the other issue that people try to do is sometimes they stay away with the old tools because they're very familiar and they're very, kind of comfortable with the old tools. You have to get over that. You have to get into the new tool structures and the new processes. But if you do these things, I think, the transformation is already, it's going to be very profitable transformation to any entity or any individual.
Amazing advice.
If I could just add, Fuzzy,
please.
The concept of merging the roles we found to be hugely productive. So it wasn't just increasing the developer productivity by putting DevOps in, not having separate DevOps, but the same with test. We actually got, by eliminating the test role and retraining them as developers and having developers accountable for quality, we actually got better quality by eliminating the test roles. And so this goal of
that is amazing.
The percent of the org that's development actually, the goal should be much higher than the 35% number that that Carlos was talking about as we start to merge these things in. Even having the Scrum Master be a role that rotates within the sprint team each sprint, as opposed to having separate Scrum Masters. There's a way to actually increase the volume of development and then increasing the pace of throughput because of that is really important in this transformation.
Incredible insights. I predict that there will be many headlines written because of the conversation taking place here today. Developers learning DevOps, that's revolutionary concept. And what you just mentioned, Jim, it's just amazing. And the insights from Carlos in terms of differentiation. So thank you. Thank you, the whole panel. Very much appreciated. Want to pass it on to Scott for any audience questions that you would like to ask, Scott. Or it was so clear that we didn't have any questions.
Do we have Scott back?
Scott, we don't hear you.
Let's see. Now we got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we clicked in and out there. We had just a quick little power blurb here at UCI today. Great conversation. Those of you in the audience, if you have some final questions, please pop in. I've got a couple of questions here. You all talked about the roles and the skills development. And for anybody that was watching this carefully, you had some great conversation around not trying to do it yourself. You were talking about the role of using open source platforms, open source vehicles, partners, channels. You talked about the merger of roles. Anything else you can suggest to companies now that they're kind of re-looking at their strategies in times of COVID-19? Now that we know this, we're in this for the long term. Anything else you can suggest that they do in terms of leveraging SaaS or in general that you found are a useful pivot for people during this crisis?
I'll start.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that's important, if you haven't gone through the whole transformation that we've been talking about with your teams already, is to talk to them ahead of time and set expectations for, these roles we're going to need more of in the future, and these roles we're going to need less. And here's how we can retrain you to the roles that we're going to need more of. It was a big accelerator for us, and it took the friction out of the process, helping people that were in infrastructure roles be retrained into, being able to define the deployment automation as part of a development team. As we brought down the number of infrastructure people was just hugely important.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe I will add one thought, is that actually in COVID times, we're in the best industry that we can be, right? So if one of the industries is going to ultimately growth is obviously IT and software and SaaS. So we are in the right place, and I think we all need to remain optimistic, right? And yeah.
Scott, I see a question. Why is there such a high failure rate on SaaS projects? Who wants to take that?
I could start on that one. I think people, as Jim actually made a very, very key statement as the big CIO of the biggest software company on the planet. He said that, a lot of people try to do this in sometimes they take the wrong approach. They do the shift and left, or they do a massive rewrite. I never believed in rewriting a whole stack of software. Anytime, and I had extensive experience in the industry, anytime a developer walks to me and the first comment out of their mouth, rewrite, I would actually discount that, and I just move on. They have to use, seriously, because that's just, people do these things based on some kind of utopic vision, some kind of something that works out in the process. We got to be really thoughtful about the process. That's why using tools like yours or using platforms really gets you a significant amount of work out there. It gets you, your success factor increases. Most of the failures that I've been involved with, or I have noticed in the industry, were about total rewrite. They haven't defined the business model. The skill set is mismatched. You're taking somebody and you say, all of a sudden, you're no longer a developer who is just an on-prem developer, and all of a sudden you make them the architect for doing something on SaaS. these things, you just got to be a little bit more careful with those kind of things. So that's my take on this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but I will say, if I can add something on that one, because from our ISV perspective, the biggest mistake is to have too much customization. So we go to one client and they start asking for specific requirements, or they want to implement SaaS in a particular manner. And then you start to customize whatever you do. And that's the wrong approach. You need to basically think what is what they want to actually change. And then that needs to be part of your configuration. And that will make this migration successful and future client onboardings. Because if you end putting like one SaaS with requirements for every client, then it's going to be a big failure. And we have seen this. So that's our biggest lesson learned.
Excellent. Makes a lot of sense. I see, Scott, another question. Which tools and skills required for process-based SaaS conversion? I can answer the tools part. Use core and software defined SaaS. That takes away a lot of the complexities there. And also case management. I wondered, case, they're referring to computer-aided software engineering, or I believe the tools would, any one of you want to take that question about how case can adapt itself to SaaS development instead of simply software development?
The only word that I will say is cloud native. That will be our first advice. So SaaS is about trying to be as cloud. And now we have like mega vendors such as Microsoft, obviously, and they give you all the tools, pretty much all the tools that you need, from DevOps to runtime, operations, monitoring, everything. So try to be cloud native. Try not to complicate the things or build too much. If you can use something that Microsoft Azure, for example, has, that's a perfect fit.
Right. Scott, I know we are getting to the end of time, but lots of great questions are showing up.
You want to just take these two final ones quickly? One about by what magnitude in terms of percentage or dollars is this better as compared to regular SaaS? Someone want to take that on?
I could tell you that. I did a case study with Current and the element in there. Let me give you just a perfect example. We had a package. We had an on-prem package, and I wanted to move it to the cloud. And the estimation of my developers on that take was going to take us about 16 months, and with about 18 developers and DevOps people full-time. With Current, I could tell you our estimation was about 4 weeks. Now, keep in mind, I had to triple that just because I wanted to give safety margin and make sure that, and with relatively smaller number of team members. So with using these tools, using platforms like Current and using that sort of thing, and Sean would tell you, they have a lot of case studies in there that would tell you it actually would shrink the cycle. But again, to what Carlos said, it's really super important. Don't try to customize too much. Don't try to, sometimes people try to squeeze the last ounce of customization, and that's what spend a lot of time on.
Well, again, Faizi, thank you again so much for bringing this panel together. I know we're going to get to a few more questions, and what we'll do is post-event, you'll get a version of the PowerPoint slide, and then we'll have a full video of this event available to you following the session, as well as links to our sponsors. And again, Robert, Monica, thank you for being part of this and joining us today. We appreciate your support as always. Again, you'll be getting a link to how to reach out to Robert and Monica and our Microsoft partners as well following this event. Again, we will look forward to seeing you all next Thursday morning at the Entrepreneurship Forum. That's a half-day event. I know you'll be excited about being part of that session. Faizi, again, we're honored as always to have you part of this. We look forward to many more of your contributions. Thanks again for being part of the community.
Honored to be part of this great panel. Thanks, everyone. It was truly insightful.
Thanks, Jam. Walid, Carlos, excellent.
Thanks,
Great
all.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Stay safe.